When I started, I didn't even know there was a job like that, so like film music, but I just was excited about putting music to film. So I just shot some video mainly to put my own music with it. I'm Dominik Scherrer, I'm a film composer, and we are at Shoreditch Recording Works, which is a new studio we built for me and for other people. I started off scoring a lot of art house films, and then at some point I got absorbed into the world of television, and I do a lot of high-end drama series at the moment. Recently, I don't know, The Tourist, The Missing, Miss Austen was on recently. It's those kind of either period or a lot of thrillers. I do both orchestral and electronic. I do a lot of live stuff, a lot of quartets, quintets, octets, the occasional orchestra, and then also I do just purely electronic soundtracks as well, or electronically led soundtracks with synths and my own sampling and sound design. When you are working, you always feel like you're a complete amateur because you encounter so many situations where you actually don't really know what you're doing, So and that's part of the excitement. My ideal workflow would be that I start maybe quite early, so I get sent a script, and then we have a chat with the showrunner, the director, the lead director. First you read it and you go like, I don't know how is this going to work, and what could I do? How can I make this project exciting, and how can we lead to the core of this story? And there are many ways of doing it, In the end, you choose one way of doing it. I then go off and I just have the script, and I start writing some themes, and I start to come up with a sound, and I almost sort of score it virtually without even any picture being shot. But then normally the production starts shooting. I may even go and visit them on set, so I get a bit of the vibe, of the production, and I see the cast start to send these tracks to the cutting room, and they start to sort of slowly bring them into the cut. On any production, they always have to use music for the cut anyway, and I'd rather for that to be my own music that's especially made for the show, rather than them using third-party temp music. They finish shooting, we may have another conversation, and then we are kind of starting to come with a sort of structure of the episode, or even the whole series or the film. Then the cut eventually gets locked. I can actually then start to write music for the specific scenes, so I may reutilize some of the bits that I've already done, but then you need to find a way to stitch this all together so it makes sense, and that the keys don't go all over the place, and eventually you'll have a sort of mocked up soundtrack, then send off for approval, and then eventually you'll orchestrate your cues, or you work with an orchestrator normally because you're already on to the next episode, so they have to do it. Then you record the orchestral part or the live part of it, be this at Abbey Road or Air Studios in London, or any kind of slightly smaller lineup, up to sort of 13, 14 players we can do in here, so we have a bit of flexibility. If the big studios are not available, we can always record here. Yeah, well, I think scoring period films and series doesn't mean you have to be authentic to the period. In a way, people, I think now they want a sort of, cinematic experience. And I think there are potentially soundtracks that are completely accurate to the period, but I don't think that's done much. It's always about making a kind of a new thing that is sort of appealing. I did a show called Ripper Street that ran like 6 years, and that was set around the time of just after Jack the Ripper, end of 19th century in the East End of London. It was a sort of big thriller, and it had to have a kind of muscular bass, and I did feed in some instruments that would have been used in the period, like banjo was used a lot in the music halls around here at the time, and then just some solo fiddle because there was a lot of Irish immigrants, so they, that kind of more Irish fiddle style. and other plucked elements. So you then can pick some elements like that, but then create a more cinematic experience. This space, we call it Shoreditch Recording Works, is built for both my productions and also for third-party clients. Previously, I was in Brick Lane in a studio, and I was there a long time, but at some point I felt like it's time to maybe build something bigger where I have the flexibility to do more recording with more players. You know, a lot of studios, even in the area here, they're very much mix-based. They're not so well set up for recording. My spec really was that I can record a string section of 14 players. You know, when you think about strings, that means, 3 first violins, 3 seconds, 3 violas, maybe 3 celli, and then there can be some double basses that can be in the room next door. You can have the double doors open, so you have a bit of separation, but not fully. So that was always my spec, and that was actually my spec before even getting this property here. You know, I knew that was kind of the minimum I wanted to be able to do. This was like a big shell. This was a kind of meditation center for Buddhists in here. So I kind of liked the idea, and I think so hopefully some of the vibe is still here now. So then I got my loco to sort of design it, but with my input, and to come up with a design for this place. And then sort of took a while to build it, but now we're here. So my loco thought this big control room is actually quite good for these modern productions, you know, like where they have a lot of writers. It's a comfortable space for big teams to work on as well. So this is very different to what I do, because I do a lot of the writing. I have another studio at home, do my little tunes there, and we make it all sound good. In here, we can do Dolby Atmos, so 7.2.4. We did a lot of brass here on this production that we've just done, so that was actually worked out really well and very nice. One of the big decisions really was whether to make an analog desk the centerpiece. A lot of the studios basically have an analog desk because that's what people want to see. Maybe, yes, an analog desk for tracking is used and is okay, but for everything else, it's basically in the way because you are working in Pro Tools or Logic and you just want your screens ergonomically placed in the desk. There's a pull-out keyboard and I can play the weighted piano 88-key keyboard, and all this wouldn't really be possible with an analog desk. Actually, one of the inspirations was a studio called Miraval in south of France. It has no analog desk. If they had the courage to be as bold, then we can do the same. When we built this studio, I knew, so we don't have an analog desk, so we need to have something else that's fixed, where you can then change your sessions in and out, but the mixer stays. So there are a few possibilities. Run another Pro Tools HDX system that just stays the same. Yes, an analog desk. You could have a digital desk, or you can use DSP software mixers. TotalMix is by far the most flexible, really. The sort of centerpiece, in a way, of the studio is the MADI FX card, and it has 192 inputs and outputs, and so everything is basically connected to those and can be controlled by the TotalMix software. And TotalMix runs all the submixes for the artists, outputs to the metering. What then comes out of that, it goes into different converters. We're using a room optimizer and monitoring system called Trinoff, so then the RME feeds into that. You can see what's going on and you have metering on all the channels, and we're making extensive use of it, and you can color code, you can group the channels, you can build mute groups, you can remote control it here with the Avid S1. It has sort of become quite a good centerpiece here, really. I was running Pro Tools, Avid Pro Tools HD at the time. I was using it with Logic, and at some point they stopped the support for that. So And then I thought like, oh, what am I going to do now? And I just got an interface, and it just happened to be RME. I think at some point I got a different interface and TotalMix, and a friend of mine sort of said, actually, rather than using a desk or a monitoring controller, just plug that straight into your speakers. And I thought like, what? We did that, and then suddenly, of course, you cut out a lot of the analog stages, and then you find actually this sounds really good. Got in the machine room, we've got an RME 1610 Pro. We've got 16 Broadhurst Gardens mic preamps that are wired directly into that. This is for the classical type recording. In here, we've got an RME 1620 Pro, which is connected via MADI, wired to all the outboard here. And then we've got an RME UFX2 in here, which is really here for other third-party clients to come in here with their own laptop, because then they can plug into that. You can put the UFX2 into class compliant mode. They don't have to install any software. They can just plug USB in, and then we've got 16 digital channels going into our system here, and then they can record from that. Next door here is a programming room, but it's also another smaller room that can be used as a control room when we have live instruments in here. And that's another RME product. It's a UFX Plus, which has a MADI port. Also, it doesn't have to be necessarily connected to this room, but by default it is, but also somebody can just work in that room on their own and do some programming, or what we did on this production that we just had on. The engineer may be doing mixing in here. The assistants will still be comping all the orchestral takes in the room next door. So those systems can be completely separate, or they can work synced together as well. We started off with these external converters. At some point, got the 1610 that was still in the old studio, because I thought like, all right, let's get the highest spec we can get for doing these, string quartet recordings. At some point, then the RME 1620 Pro got announced, and that's actually at the moment our gateway to Dante, because it can convert from MADI to Dante. And then what works really well on those is the remote control via IP. So it just means, even from in here, we can remote control the 1610, which is in the machine room. And the routing, is completely flexible. We're actually using a lot of the ADAT outputs to go into the Trinnov ultimately. So that's all the routing is, it's not annoying like some others can be. So I think that's working really well. What's come out in the US now, because they are the main producers, is Miss Austen. It's a new novel, but that's set around the time of Jane Austen. So that was on BBC here, but it's on PBS in America, and it's actually nice because it gets a lot of attention, and the soundtrack does as well. So I'm getting lots of messages and stuff about it. We have just completed the first production we did in this studio, really, and it's called The Assassin, and it's for Amazon Studios. It was quite a big production with big lineups. We did quite big brass section in here and string sections, and of course all the mix in here. And I was initially kind of nervous because this is about using a new space and using it in anger on a big production. It went quite smoothly, even though we've only really just moved in. Focus on some things that you find interesting and can do well, or are you're trying to do well, rather than being maybe a sort of jack of all trades. Carry on working, find any short film that you can score, or you're allowed to score. I just made my own films, so I just went into the woods with a camera and just shot some video, but really mainly to put my own music with it. And I think it's just the more you do, the more you understand where the excitement lies.